Here we go, continuing the Hall of Fame discussion with J.P. Morosi leading the league. Earlier, we discussed some of the first-time eligible players on this year's ballot, J.P. Let's get back to the guys that have been on the ballot previously and dispel some of the myths, some of the arguments against these players that have been out there for a while, which may actually have led to their not getting the required 75% of the vote previously. Where do you want to start by kind of debunking some of this stuff?
Sure. Let's begin with Carlos Beltran, who is on my ballot for a second consecutive year, Matt and Harold, and I believe he is a deserving Hall of Famer in every possible way. We're talking about one of, objectively, the 5 or 6 best switch hitters in the history of Major League Baseball. He drove in more runs than the switch-hitting Mickey Mantle. He stole more than 300 bases. I understand that there were some voters who wished to, for at least 1 year, withhold support because of the Astros sign-stealing scandal of 2017. But in fairness, that was in Beltran's last year. He was 40 years old. His resume was already complete at the time. He's already been penalized for those misdeeds by losing his opportunity to manage the New York Mets. At this point, I don't think he needs to be penalized again by barring him from the Hall for something that happened in his final year as a player. I just don't believe that that's fair in this moment for someone who is objectively one of the very best switch hitters in Major League Baseball history.
It reminds me of Robbie Alomar with the spitting, right? You know, they punished.
Oh, yeah, that's a good call.
And then the next year he went in.
That's not a bad one. Let's talk about some of these other people and players, rather, and the argument against that we're going to try to systematically break down. I have grown very tired, as many have, of trying to discredit Todd Helton's great compendium of work based on the fact that he played half of his home games in altitude. It didn't work for Larry Walker. He got in, and it shouldn't work for Todd Helton. He should get in as well.
Exactly. One of the best pure hitters of his generation, helped, I believe, Matt and Harold, in terms of his credentials, by the fact that he played his entire career with one team. He is indelibly linked that 07 World Series team and Coors Field and the great moments in Rockies history. And you're right, it's not fair to discredit a player for the team that he was drafted by. It's just not fair at all. And let's also remember, and Harold can speak to this, when you would go from playing at altitude at Coors and then go on the road, that takes a toll on your body. The ball spins differently when you leave Coors than it does when you're there. So we had to relearn that every single time he went on the road. I think when you talk with players who have experienced Coors over a long period of time, there are some negatives that go along with playing there in terms of the toll it takes on your body. So the numbers, when you look at his OPS plus, which corrects for the ballpark and league factors, he is still clearly one of the best hitters of his generation. So by any number, by any anecdote, Todd Helton is a clear Hall of Famer. And gentlemen, I believe he's going to get over 75% in a couple weeks.
And he should. He should be in the Hall of Fame. You know, there's no doubt there's an advantage playing in Coors. I think we can all agree on that. Mm-hmm. You know, the ball carries a little bit more. That pop-up you hit may end up off the wall, different things like that. But Todd Helton was one of the best hitters of his generation.
Here's another guy as we move forward on this list who I think has been, I guess, penalized for a different reason. And we talk about this with various players. When you don't spend your entire career with, say, 1 or even 2 teams, you might not have the advocacy by that team pushing you for the Hall of Fame. The most famous example that I can come up with is how the Red Sox got behind Jim Rice, and he deservedly landed in Cooperstown. The Astros have very recently made a great push on behalf of Billy Wagner, but I don't think initially that was the case when he first appeared on the ballot. Good years with the Mets, the Phillies. Maybe he was too good for too many teams. I'm glad the current Astros brass, our friend Gene Diaz over there, they've really pushed Billy, and I'm hoping that he can get past that argument this year.
Yes, let's add the Red Sox and the Braves. Let's not forget that, of course, he pitched for both of those franchises toward the end of his career. He has, Matt, among all pitchers in the history of the game, with more than 900 innings, one of the very best ERAs, one of the very best strikeout rates. He almost never walked guys in key spots. That to me is really important. And it's also mentioned at various points. I know Chris Russo's talked about this as well, the postseason dynamic for a reliever. He actually, in save situations, was quite good in the postseason. And I think it's important to keep that in mind. Look at that. Look at minimum 900 innings. Second best ERA ever. Exactly. Look at that. And Ks per 9, opponent batting average. Elite. Listen, it's not fair to compare the relievers of today with the number of innings that Fingers pitched or Suter pitched.
Right.
It's a different job, a different role. For the era in which he performed, he was one of the very best, most dominant relief pitchers in the history of baseball, right? Probably after Mariano in terms of some of those key stats, in terms of just the dominance that he had. And let's not forget, too, he could have gone on longer and kept compiling numbers. Go back and look at what he did in 2010, his final season with the Braves, with a young Kimbrel and a young Johnny Venters in that bullpen. He was dominant back then in Bobby Cox's final year as a Major League manager. Plus, I love the story. He was right-handed until he broke his arm playing football, had to learn how to throw left-handed, and became one of the best lefties ever. Love the story, love the athlete, love Billy Wagner, a deserving Hall of Famer.
Lastly, on this group, a guy who is, full disclosure here, friend of the show, and Gary Sheffield is in the final year of eligibility on the BBWAA ballot. I think the things that he's had to overcome, the innuendo and rumor he's had to dispel, the never-proven link to the PED era with Sheff. And again, like Billy Wagner, the fact that he played at such a high level for such a big number of teams, a lot of different employers, he didn't have one or two of them pushing his candidacy. Where are you with Sheff, and what chance do you think he has to get in this year in his final season on the ballot?
He's a clear yes for me, Matt. I vote for him every year. He's above 500 home runs, of course, for his career. And his numbers are improving. If you look at Ryan Thibodeau's vote tracker, they're moving closer to 75%. There's a chance here in a way that I did not necessarily expect. I've always been a big fan of his, and I'm just honestly heartened, encouraged, and a little bit surprised, honestly, that some of my colleagues have come around and are now supporting him in his final year on the ballot. You're exactly right, Matt. He never failed a test. For me, he is someone that is very deserving of the Hall. And as one of my colleagues has said before about a particular player, look at what he's been able to do over his career. Do you believe in his career with what he did? Was he the same player when he began it to where he ended it with the consistency of production? And the answer with Gary Sheffield is absolutely yes. One of the most feared hitters of his time. Yes, for multiple different teams, of course. And there you see the improvement year over year. I really thought that with last year arriving at 55%, that even if he got a nice boost this year, it was not going to be enough. But if he keeps on that trajectory, you add another 14%, 15%, and gets you right around 70. You need to find 5 more percentage points. And I'm a believer. I've really been a fan of Sheffield as a Hall of Famer for a long time, that there is a chance here. And I'm honestly more optimistic than ever before that Gary Sheffield will find his way to Cooperstown.
Love it. Good stuff, JP. Kind of a final, if you will, dispelling some of the arguments against players who we feel are Hall of Fame worthy, as we are less than 3 weeks away from learning who makes out the class of 2024. JP Morosi with us.